Hello, it's Matt Thomas here from King Unique, and I am back with Sonic Academy because I'm going to look at a synth. Yeah, it's time for me to look at a synth again. Which synth am I looking at? Well, the question is answered by looking down here, where the synth in question is currently sitting. But because I don't want you to bend your neck at all, we are going to use the magic of CGI, all CGI this, no wires, to fly the synth into shot. It's an Arturia MiniBrute 2! Look at that! It's quite good, this. I have been messing around with it, and I've come to the conclusion that it is quite good, if not more than quite good. Let's put that down carefully so the Arturia marketing department can relax. There we go. Right. So yes, it's quite good. If you've got one, you may think it's quite good too. If you don't think it's quite good, maybe we can find out what there is to do with it that might convince you. And if you already like it, then maybe you're going to go, oh, there's some more things I didn't know I could do with that. I like it even more now. So those are our options. Of course, you may have just seen this video, rushed out, bought one on the strength of my compelling delivery and interesting ideas, and are now watching it for the second time, in which case it's all gravy from here. Right, there we are. We know why we're doing this and what we're doing it for. Now, what are we working with? Well, the MiniBrute 2. It's a 2-oscillator monosynth. That sounds quite simple, and in some ways it is, which is great because sometimes you want a simple synth. But it is nicely designed. The VCOs, you have two different VCOs. You have VCO 1 and VCO 2, both of which are spec'd quite differently. VCO 1 is a far more fully featured option. You have, for a start, all the waveforms are on volume sliders, so you can bring in mixtures of square, sawtooth, triangle, etc., rather than just switching between them. But you can do that on VCO 2. So between the two different VCOs, you kind of have this difference in architecture. Additional features on VCO 1 are control of pulse width on the square wave. You have an ultra saw effect for the sawtooth. You have a metallizer wave folder on the triangle, which you can actually send other waveforms into as well. So straight away, VCO 1 on its own is a huge source of sound. So VCO 2 backs up this nice oscillator with a simple selection of options, such as a few switchable waveforms, pitch range that can be switched between several octaves down to a very fine adjustment, or even, this is quite useful, scaled down to just the low end so it works as an additional LFO. You do actually have two LFOs already, which can be running freely. They can be synced to the MiniBrute sequencer. Each of these LFOs has 6 waveforms available, so there's some quite nice modulation options from those two. We have an interesting and quite capable multi-mode filter. It's a thing called a Steiner-Parker filter, which for some reason it seems to arouse fierce passions on the internet. If I hadn't heard about these fierce passions on the internet, I would never have thought anything other than that's quite a nice filter. Sue me for my lack of discrimination in the area of filtering anger, but it strikes me as pretty sort of squirtly, squeedly kind of a filter. You know the ones I mean? Those squirtly, squeedly ones. Yeah, it's one of them. It's got that kind of fluid sound you got from the 70s Rolands. Not quite the same, but it's very close to that. I like it quite a bit. You get low pass, band pass, high pass, and a notch filter. The cutoff and the resonance can both be modulated, which is quite a nice feature. And you have a dedicated ADSR envelope that is by default fed to control the cutoff of that filter. Finally, we have the output section, where as well as the master outputs and global volume control, we also have a thing called the Brute Factor, which mimics a rather groovy trick from the days of him over there, the old Mini-Moogs, which allowed you to make a feedback loop between the headphone out and the external filter in. Now, Arturia have taken the very sensible step of just wiring that all internally, and you can simply dial up as much as you want. It can turn the MiniBrute from quite a straightforward, warm, direct, simple idea of a synth into quite unpredictable, organic sort of squalling, howling thing. It's quite an effect. So this really is a knob that kind of lets you decide what sort of analog synth you want this to be in a way, which is not a bad thing to have. So there's a lot packed in behind that little deceptively simple blue knob there. As well as a synthesis engine, there's an arpeggiator and a sequencer, which share these controls down here, so you can control rate, time division, etc. You've got transport controls, so that you can set this thing running and stop it, record it, and so on. Next to that, we have a nice little sync section where we can hook the MiniBrute up to speak MIDI, or to speak MIDI via USB, or to clock to somebody else's analog input, or to send its own out, or run on its own internal clock. So that's quite a nice little section with a metronome built in as well. And then we have performance controls, pitch bend, mod wheel, and they can be routed to a variety of destinations with the switches above, and a 2-octave keyboard. Now the 2-octave keyboard is velocity and pressure sensitive, all of which you can route from the MiniBrute's patchbay. And that is where things get a bit more exciting again, because while the MiniBrute works without any cables inserted and has what's called a normalized signal path, so you can just turn it on and play it, you can also pull out your patch cords and start routing all these different sections into each other. So at that point, MiniBrute 2 becomes a bit brutey and not very mini. So yeah, it becomes sort of Biggie Brutey. I'm not sure what the marketing department would think of that one. Biggie Brutey? No. MiniBrute 2. That's the MiniBrute 2. What it does and how it does it is what we're going to look at now. So I'll stop babbling and howling at you, and we'll just mess around with the synth.
Thanks everybody for watching, commenting and indeed liking. We really do appreciate all the support we get here on our Sonic Academy YouTube channel. So if you found this video super useful, please, we'd love you to hit the subscribe button. We update the YouTube channel every week with new content. And if you want to watch some more relevant content, just click on the videos beside me.